I'm just okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for attending. And Tina, our guest, Tina Woodall, I'm so glad that she found the time to spend with us this afternoon. Thank you so much, Tina, for taking some time off your busy day to do this interview with us. And I've been so looking forward to this. I'm sure others have been too. So without further much ado, let's start. Tina, could you tell us about yourself, please, and what your role is in your current job?
Well, thank you, Lori. I'm really, really happy to be here, and hopefully I can share some useful tips as we go through this.
I'm sure.
So currently today I am working at Ascension, which is a healthcare organization. It's, huge healthcare organization here in the United States. And I am a senior solution architect for the group and working on solutions, implementing them for the Ascension. That's what I'm doing today.
And how did you land that job?
So let me answer this a different way.
Okay.
My son accuses me of being a kangaroo, and I have to laugh. If you go to my LinkedIn profile, you'll see that I spent 6 years at Orlando Health. But then I took a break because I got married and had a kid. I came back and spent another 10 years at Orlando Health. My first 6 years was home health, IT support, home health. And then the 10 after that was in IT, specifically embedded in the business for discharge plan utilization review as population health.
So not exactly Salesforce.
No, I didn't know Salesforce at that time. It wasn't Salesforce at all. And then I left that to go work for a company that had 70 plus outpatient methadone clinics throughout the United States. And I was working on their EHR, still no Salesforce, but that's where I met Salesforce, embraced it with all hands, and then jumped into to working for Salesforce full time, then went into consulting. And then while I was on a consulting gig, my last one at Slalom, I was working assigned to Ascension, and then I made the leap to Ascension, much to the chagrin of my consulting company. But I think it was a win-win. There was a lot of great things. So I am now working at Ascension, but I was working at Ascension via the consulting firm since February last year. See why I wanted to back that up and tell you that? Because, and this will tie into our later discussions.
Yeah.
And because when we talk about career strategy and career growth and why you do things, remember that, because we're going to come back to that.
Okay. So you were essentially in the IT part already of the healthcare at that time.
I was, but I wasn't officially IT. And I was embedded in the department. So I didn't work in the IT department. I was IT in the department itself. Another phrase for that is shadow IT. So I technically supported the users who were who did the clinical care.
I see. Were you at all at the patient facing part of healthcare? No. Okay. So was there much of a transition to tech prior to tech itself? What were you doing?
So I have stories and I like to share them.
Yeah.
And thank you for allowing me the opportunity for sharing them.
Yeah.
I was a Girl Friday who was hired to be a secretary to a consultant at that time, Orlando Health. They had nursing homes and all this other kind of stuff. And he was a consultant. And he never used me at all. The other secretaries used me to do their grunt work. And so I reached out to him and said, I'm here to help however I can. But meanwhile, they kept on putting me at the front desk and all those things, answering calls, bored out of my mind. So I started reading the computer at the desk. I started reading the computer manuals. I literally started reading the computer manuals.
Wow.
That like the applications, like not like how to take the computer apart, but how to use the applications, how you use this, how you use that, and how you can improve it. And then when the person I was supporting saw me jumping in and helping technically and applying what I had been learning on my own, I eventually translated that into providing a support from the department, helping them understand IT and being that liaison, and also helping them troubleshoot. And it was because I was so bored on my mind, I just started reading computer manuals and started helping out. That's how I went from Girl Friday into IT.
That's amazing. That's initiative and hunger for learning. Okay, so when did you actually start your Salesforce job? Like how many years ago?
2017. It's not been long.
2017. And did you have to go for a certificate before that job?
So when I was at the company that had outpatient methadone clinics and everything, and I started learning about Salesforce, and I was trying to get experience, and we had Salesforce there, and I'm like, hey, let me work on that. Hey, let me work on it. No, you're too busy. Hey, let me work on it. No, you're too busy. Hey, let me work on it. You're too busy. Because I knew I needed experience and hands-on experience. And Mike Wheeler tells you always grow where you're at, right? Where you're at, grow.
Right.
So I finally told the boss, I'll do it for free on my own time. It's like, fine, because they needed someone. And knowing I need to make the leap, I went and started studying for my certification because I knew that would give me authenticity. So I needed experience. I needed authenticity. Another thing too is I started keeping an eye on all the Salesforce job postings in the area. So now I'm starting to track what companies are constantly hiring, what kind of jobs are they looking for, what kind of positions are they looking to fill. And so when I got my certification, I made the leap to a company in town, pre-COVID, pre all that. And they had high turnover rate, but that was my key in. I figured I could put up with anything for a year. And they did have a high turnover rate. And I made it to almost to a year. And then I translated that full-time Salesforce gig into something else. But what got me there was the certification and the experience I did for free, my paying job, to be able to put down in my application, I had experience and I knew what kind of company I was going to.
Wow, that's
but
really
you need
a great strategy.
Yeah, you need to think about that. You keep an eye onto your local jobs and also even international, and see those that you start watching who's constantly posting. Those are your companies that have toxic cultures or they're not paying anything or stuff like that. Track them because they're easier to get into, knowing just put in a year and then get out. Just literally, sometimes even 6 months. But that's another way in that that a lot other places may they have a great culture. People don't leave, right? They're going to be hard as heck to get into, right?
Right.
So just pay attention to the companies that are constantly posting positions.
So was there much challenge when you applied for that position that you targeted?
No, because they were constantly looking for people because they had a high turnover rate. So it's like,
So even if they assessed your tech skills, you pretty much had it. Like, no question about it.
Yeah, pretty much, because I had the background. So so it was a lot easier to sell when you have companies that are desperate because they're constantly flipping people. It's a lot easier to sell, but you're going in and realizing something's wrong here, and how long can you suck it up for?
Right. And then after that, did you go right away into consulting?
No, I made 11 months there, and then I started looking. As it got closer to a year, I started looking and interviewing, and so something else. You've been doing this excellent job of this. You've been leading Salesforce Heroes and really getting your name out and things like that. So I started a Salesforce Saturday because I couldn't really get the local user groups for whatever reasons. It wasn't working out. And so I started out a Salesforce Saturday and just got people together. Didn't know jack of what I was talking about. And you know what? That was okay, because I wasn't doing the one doing the presentations. I was like, what I did is like, you get the experts, right?
Like what I'm doing now.
Exactly. That's why I was like, oh, you're doing a good job. And so Salesforce Saturday, libraries, if you're, now that we're getting past, we can actually meet in person again. Libraries are a good spot to host meetings. Even if all your user groups are taken up, you can still do a Salesforce Saturday in a coffee shop. And so I started doing Salesforce Saturdays. I had to find out what people would show up for. So if I had people teaching something, that was a motivation for them to show up. So I would always have different topics and things like that. I use Meetup. There is a fee for Meetup. You can use Eventbrite. There's, check what works for you. And so during the time I was at that job where I was cutting my teeth on, growing into a Salesforce admin, I started Salesforce Saturday and started networking. And from the local networking and my co-user, I got the introduction and was told Coastal Cloud and go check out Coastal Cloud. And then because of my networking, and actually I had the gentleman who interviewed me, his wife works where I used to work, but the networking and the recommendations from the group gave the foundation to Leap. So as we were talking before we started this off, it's this connection. So you can actually meet people in person. And if you can't start a user group, go to those user groups. If you don't want to start one, attend. And if nothing else, carve out, I've seen Trailhead Tuesdays. People get together after hours for Trailhead Tuesdays. There's Salesforce Saturdays. There's so many things out there now. It's like ridiculous, which is great, but establish those connections.
Wow, thank you for confirming that I was doing the right thing. Okay, so when you came from the healthcare background into the Salesforce, what soft skills do you think was most leveraged in that transition?
So we're gonna skip that first Salesforce job because that's just working in a regular job in the office, and that has its own dynamics. And let's move just to the consulting, because a lot of your new people are going to do your opportunities are going to be greater in consulting right now, not working on the client side, as it were. You're just going to have a much better chance. So understanding the business is so vital, right? So understanding the business and understanding corporate speak and understanding how to run a project, not as a project manager, but understand the cadence of it. So my experience in healthcare and being able to talk to people who are implementing Salesforce and being able to talk to them from the corporate as well as the healthcare experience and being able to talk to the people and then translate what they want into Salesforce configurations that's the sweet spot, right? So it's about being able to do user stories and things like that. For my path, my ticket is that I've gone all in on Health Cloud, and I can speak to healthcare corporate America. I understand it. I can work with that. I do understand project management and implementation. I've done it multiple times, iterating for that. But if I was talking to someone new and they have some kind of corporate experience, you need to translate that. How do you translate your corporate experience and your understanding the culture norms and implementing stuff and translate that to Salesforce? If I'm talking to someone who only has a couple of years experience and it's patient facing, and they're looking at Salesforce, I'm almost trying to say that you may want to look at development, things like that, people who want the clinical experience, because there's no project management experience, there's no business analyst experience, there's no executive kind of corporate experience. So it might be more useful to look at the ISVs and see if anyone is needing clinical feedback or information to work with them. There's a lot of digital health coming to market or trying to. It was all the rage last year. They're hurting now this year.
Hurting in what way?
A lot of them are not hitting their goals. There's some articles out there that, they had a lot of investments last year for the digital health stream, and they're still trying to figure out that secret recipe. So they're finding that a lot of the money is slowing down than what was all piling in last year. But that's another option too. But you need to find your unique selling proposition and push it hard. But one more thing, you need to look at Salesforce. What is Salesforce promoting? So go look at Salesforce salespeople. What are they trying to sell? And your consulting firms want to be lockstep with Salesforce. The Salesforce AEs are selling licenses to companies. Your consulting firms want those Salesforce AEs to refer the implementation to them. They're going to want consultants who can actually configure and implement what was sold. So whatever Salesforce is selling, their focus, if their focus is on like provider and payer is a big push right now for them for healthcare this year, We're really all in on the provider stream and the payer management. It's makes sense for that to be space. Well, what do you know about providers? Credentialing, provisioning, managing them, their paperwork, everything they have to do. If you worked in a medical office, how familiar are you with providers and what they have to do and to be managed? Is a provider watching this video? Yes, providers have to be managed, and they know that because you have to go through the whole process, especially if you're applying to provide care to members. And what's that whole process? That would be your hook. So if you're talking to a consulting firm, if you've worked with providers or you've worked with insurance companies and understand that, how can you translate that to being a consultant with that story? At the end of the day, Lori, as a consultant, you're a widget. And this is what I want to put on the slide deck. As at the end of the day, you're a consultant. If you're a consultant, you're a widget, and your ability to build is how the company makes money off of you in the consulting.
Yeah.
And you need to think about that. How are you, they have to choose between widget A and widget B, and they need the widget to be able to do X, Y, Z because that's how they bill. That's the mindset in consulting. Remove the fluff, remove all that fluffy stuff.
Okay.
They need to bill. They need to bill.
Okay. That's a lot of insight there. Okay, so you didn't take much to adapt to your Salesforce job because you were already in the IT. Currently, from what I gathered, you are working sort of like hybrid. Is that correct, or are you fully remote?
Oh, I'm fully remote.
Oh, okay. And part-time, full-time? How flexible
I'm
are your
full-time.
hours?
It's a corporate job. It's not, I mean, if I need to take off during the middle of the day and go do something with the kid, that's fine. There is flexibility. And then my kid's in charter school. He's a teenager and he's not driving yet though. So I need to leave and go pick him up in the middle of the day. And I can take phone calls, but I don't take, in-person meetings. And I block my calendar, and I'm perfectly fine and flexible with that. So it does work for my life, which I'm grateful for.
So if you have, I don't know if you want to walk us through like your typical day, or because I also kind of want to imagine how you work. Let's say you're given an assignment. How long does it take you to do the certain steps and finish the project?
So I'm the solution architect in a domain, an area, right? My focus is in the provider world. So that's where my area is. And a potential project, because even though I'm not consulting, I'm still working on projects at Ascension, right? It can come forward and you have pre-discovery where we're talking about what do we think we want to do, validating with the business, getting the resourcing lined up, and then you have kickoff. And the pre-discovery can take a couple of weeks, I think a month, a couple of months. Then once that project is approved to be official and been resourced and the scope has been defined, then you have kickoff. And that's where your project management, your business analyst, your solution architect come together. They meet with the stakeholders, they kick it off, and they go into discovery. Discovery on average is 6 to 8 weeks, with usually in consulting 6 to 8 weeks, or it can be with the more complicated clients like Ascension. It's got a lot more complexity in some of its areas. It can take up to 3 months. That's the really, really, really long, complicated integration ones. I saw that chat come up and down, so you're gonna have to help me, Lori.
Right.
Let me on the chat. So then you have the there it is. I can pop that up. So then you go through discovery, then you go through implementation, and usually working agile, you go in sprints of 2 weeks, but ideally 3 months is usually a good 3 months, 4 months if you have complicated integrations. And then you go live and support it. So yeah, it can be pretty long and pretty intense when you're dealing with the level I am. When I've worked on projects that literally took 4 weeks of discovery, 2 months for implementation, and you're live. I mean, it's relative, right?
Wow. Okay, we have a question here from Marshall. Would you say that the opportunities with Health Cloud is with provider management or with revenue cycle?
Provider management.
Hey, and everyone, if you have more questions, feel free to drop them in the chat box. Okay.
So interesting. I only see you, so I'm not even sure. Oh, we have 9 participants. Hey, everybody. I just see Lori and that's it. And I don't have all the other things. So hi.
Oh, really? How about now?
No, you're fine. No, you're good. I just had to, I don't do Zoom usually on my iPad. I user. It was a user thing. It's all good.
Okay. Because right now I'm seeing my whole screen is full, but 9 participants is what I'm seeing. Although I don't know what happens if I minimize my.
No. It's me on my iPad. Because the way I have it. You're fine.
Okay. All right. So now, so you're in a very senior position right now. What was the trajectory from when you started towards that position? I mean, when you started as a Salesforce professional, how was your trajectory going to now a senior solutions architect? Is that what it is? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So I am very laser focused in my career progression. I want to be very, very, very clear. I mean, I will get up at 5 a.m. consistently to study. And I have made a decision that I was going to go all in on Health Cloud. And I was building on my healthcare background and then doing that with Health Cloud. Salesforce is so huge now that for someone to say, oh, I know Salesforce, well, it's too big, way too big. And we have 3 releases a year, right? So you're constantly learning, constantly growing. But I made a very, very deliberate decision to build on where I was from and focusing on that. And I also have to give in tremendous thanks. I'm a Gen Xer and the millennials hopping like kangaroos on jobs because I literally, and you look at me, I was 6 years for Orlando Health and then came back as another 10. And I got to tell you, if I had just kept on like, oh, I'm going to just stay. This is an incredible time. The Salesforce professionals are so in demand. Season 1s are juniors, you got to fight for it. So it's the conundrum, right? So people who are new to Salesforce are hearing, oh, everything's in demand. And yet it's hard to get that first opportunity because the experienced people are the ones in demand and you got to, work through that. And we can talk about different ways of doing that. But this is a great time and a great opportunity. So yes, I hopped like a kangaroo and that helped, right? And now this last time I'm going to give a shout out to Slalom, great consulting company. I had a great boss. I really did. But I just saw the opportunity to join Ascension, which I've been consulting at for quite a while, actually, full time from Slalom. I just saw an opportunity to be part of the team and I made the leap. Otherwise, if I'm ever going to go back in consulting, I would go to Slalom. So thumbs up for Slalom. But I was very focused and always thinking of my next job. And that seems sort of odd. People are like, oh, I'm here for 3 to 5 years. In this industry and the current market, why?
That's
usually it's the employer market. In this industry, and especially in technology, that's something to keep in mind. Technology, if you get it, you land with a good place and you're building your experience, especially that first job, you want a year. You want to build solid for a year. You really want that experience. And after that, but you can only hop so long before you start getting a bad rep, right? So It's like, I'm at Ascension for quite a while. I'm very happy where I landed. And again, Slalom was great too. But at a certain point you hop, and then you're like, okay, I'm at a spot where I'm going to stop, right? But be strategic, be thoughtful. But the days in the industry right now, take advantage of it. Totally take advantage of it.
That is amazing. Okay, what do you like most about your job? And what do you like the least?
Yeah, does anyone ever go on record to say what they like the least of their job? Come on, really? You
Yeah,
ever got an honest
positively.
answer on that? Right?
Right?
I know. So
Okay, just focus on what you love.
So I love who I work with. I love the people overall. They're good people. And then it's the opportunity, and there's good people at Slum too. It's the opportunity to be on the ground floor for some very transformational work that's very exciting. And yes, there are days where I'm pulling out my hair and going, really? And that's the part, and and it's a struggle with any of these kinds of jobs, keeping the work-life balance, right? It's like, I know today's gonna be a long day. This is my first day back from being off a couple of times. It's gonna be a long day, but I love the opportunity of doing some really cool transformational stuff that usually people aspire to. It's such a large enterprise organization. This is the cool stuff. So this is really fun. Yeah, so that's why I'm there.
Cheryl says here that hopping at all seems foreign to her when most of the people she worked with have been in the same hospital for 20 to 30 years. Oh my God. I kind of felt like I wasted my last 4 years at the local hospital. I wish I knew about this sooner.
It's weird times, right? Because that's what everyone's used to, especially in healthcare. You stay forever, the system, it's safe, it's secure. It's just an industry. My mom was a nurse. Okay. So I also come to it honestly. However, she was an LPN. So when I started working on the IT corporate side, she's like, you're working for the enemy. That was her thought process. I was like, yeah, thanks. But the reality is, please, people who watch this or whatever, listen, it's not blasphemy. And yes, it is about taking care of the patient, but it's a business.
It is, yeah.
And you've got to take care of the business of you. And then next is the job, because 2 weeks later, they'll wonder you will be replaced. And I think I've watched that happen at Orlando Health when I was there. I watched them do some turnovers and the way they cleaned house and departments and stuff like that. And that was really hard.
Yeah.
Because people felt like a family.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to take care of you.
I knew of several people too who were in the management position, and then they had to cut some budget. So these managers ended up on the floor working as floor nurses in a totally different department. So
right?
It's really tough. It's really tough. Plus, you were right that well, I thought there was security, but during the 2020 pandemic, there were several of us in the hospitals who were furloughed, and those were in the day surgery and the outpatient department. And I was so thankful that I was one of the essential workers. But now I'm like looking back, I was thinking, maybe I should have just been furloughed and encountered Salesforce right away and used the money that I would be getting because of unemployment to just sustain me for those months. But instead, I was so thankful I was still working. Duh. I wish. Oh my God.
That's the reality. Everyone has their own path and what it takes for them to keep things going. And excuse me, my dog's upset in the background. Everyone has to take their own path, but as long as you think through why you're where you're at in your path, and I'm always thinking of my next job. I love Ascension. Where am I going to be in a couple of years? And what I'm doing today, does that keep me moving forward and keep me promoting to where I want to be? And if you're doing something that's not taking you on a path you want to be, life is too short. Fine.
True. So, how many certificates do you now have?
7.
Did you, so if we are going to go for the Health Cloud, what do we have to have, like prior certificates?
You can't. Yeah, you can't. So Health Cloud doesn't have a certification. It has a accredited part. It has a super badge. So Health Cloud super badge. And then you're going to have a Health Cloud expert. It's a partner certification. So if you're a Salesforce consultant and Then through the consulting firm, you can get the Health Cloud partner certification, which is completely different. Salesforce has said that they're not going to come out with a Health Cloud certification for the general people, and they only did one for their partner side.
Okay.
So your best bet actually in Health Cloud is to do as a non-partner, non-consultant with a partner firm, is to actually do the super badge. That's your best path forward.
Are there prerequisites like app builder or advanced admin or sales cloud? Not really.
No, and again, you only can take that if you're actually on a partner side to be able to access that. Now, to get into the critical certifications, if you join a consulting firm, your admin is like the base pass, but then they want you to have your Sales Cloud and Service Cloud, and they will actually pay you more money if you have those. And the reason being is the scoring of the consulting firm. They're scoring on Salesforce. Salesforce has like the scoring system for all the partners.
Is that why there's like gold and summit and whatever partner?
Yep. And part of that, getting that, is how many of their consultants have the Sales Cloud certification, the Service Cloud certification, as well as other things, right? And Salesforce changes it up all the time. But this is why consulting firms are always incentivizing their consultants to have a Sales Cloud and Service Cloud certification on top of the admin. That's why they're doing that.
Okay. I'm not sure that this is part of your experience, but we have a question here. If we have nonprofit organizations where we can work as volunteers, given our healthcare background, I'm pretty sure there are.
There are. So you can, but understanding nonprofit, you want to take the nonprofit modules and you want to understand the nonprofits. They are done differently. And you can find, through, if you have a religious organization, or if you want to look around, or if there's any charity organization you want to get them set up and help them, they get 10 free licenses. You can set that up and you can get it doing. Setting up's not the hard part. It's helping support them and maintain them, because their understanding and adoption is usually going to be, that's the hard part. It's not doing the configuration and setting up, but it's a good experience, and you can find them. Once you identify a nonprofit that you want to help and they don't have Salesforce, you just go on to the Salesforce website and they fill out an application. They have to show their tax ID and show that you prove they're a nonprofit, and they get their 10 licenses.
Oh, okay. So
they get a sandbox too.
Yeah, I know of like two people who are quite the influencers who are working with some nonprofit organizations. I can direct you to them, Nina, later. Okay, I think that's all really I have for my questions. But I would be so curious what advice you would give to us very, very new into this profession.
So assume me that it's just a bridge to get out of your healthcare. The question is it truly Salesforce, or is it that you can look at something else? I know it's blasphemy to mention other things because I'm on a Salesforce call, but is it that you're, as healthcare workers, are you trying to get out of your job and more a technical path? If you're part of a hospital system, reach out to your clinical informatics teams, right? They're nurses who are working in IT, and go find one or two of them, find out who it is. If you're part of a hospital system, and buddy up to them and start asking them about how their experience is, because they're the ones who've been in the trenches as nurses, and now they're actually working IT, and they can tell you if any upcoming opportunities are happening, right? Going from pure patient facing into the technical is hard, and they can tell you the pros and the cons. They can tell you what it's like, and they can tell you if there's any opportunities. That's number one. Number two is find out if there's any Salesforce actually being used. Your marketing departments are usually the first ones in healthcare who purchase Salesforce. They're looking at Marketing Cloud, and that's usually your Salesforce entry into healthcare is usually through the marketing department. The marketing department is trying to figure out how can they promote service lines from your healthcare system into the local consumer population, right? And how do they follow up with people and so forth. So then you want to network, talk to your clinical informatics, but also if you by any chance know anyone in the marketing group, reach out and see if they also have Salesforce. The reason you want to reach out is because do you have a chance to grow where you're at? Is a chance that you can have for mentorship or help out or contribute or whatever. So these are easy paths to get forward. It's not only Salesforce that's begging for people, it's all technical industries today are begging for people. So that's something to keep in mind too. Get back into looking at your job postings, looking at what's hiring and what would be easy. You could look at maybe that you have it easier because your background might be easier to go into a different technical path and then switch over to Salesforce. And it might be a faster path, right? Mm-hmm. So I love Salesforce, but I'm being pragmatic about what makes sense. So look at all the technical postings, look at all the technical jobs, and make sure you're on the right path to the fastest solution. My having an IT background in healthcare made it a lot easier for me to grasp a lot of concepts and flow into consulting because I've been living it, right? So it's a lot easier to move faster because I was building on that. So that's the only thing I would say. It's Salesforce is awesome, but there's a lot of other technical industries dying for people right now. Take advantage of that. So the clinical informatics, look if you already have it, look at other industries, just watch the job postings, look at what's out there, track them, start watching the companies, look for those who keep on having turnover. And those are usually easier to get in, but you're also going to want to leave sooner too. Don't stay committed for the long term. Consulting, you need, you can start with an admin certification and then go from there. But they're going to usually want you to have Sales Cloud or Service Cloud as soon as possible. Mm-hmm. When you land in a consulting job or you're interviewing for a consulting job, you really, really want to find out what kind of support they'll give you in your first jobs. So you got to be careful. Some of the small consulting firms are out there. The Salesforce AEs are selling Salesforce like crazy. We see it everywhere, right? They're all like, Salesforce is exploding, but make sure that they're going to give you support because unfortunately I've seen where green Salesforce people are hired and all of a sudden put on a project by themselves with like no support. And so you have to be careful and you need to ask. And when you're interviewing with consulting firms, they're like, oh yeah, we'd be happy to have you on. It's like, great. And then you learn, well, are you going to get the support or not? Right. So that's another thing to be careful. And you may still want to make the leap and figure you're going to muddle through. That's fine and dandy. It's intense pressure though. It's a really, really intense pressure. Another tip of the day, a lot of consulting firms will lie to you. Okay. So, or maybe not represent the truth in a way that you want to know. I'm being just pretty much cards on the table. So you got to be careful and really, really think about what do you want? What do you need for support? And sometimes in trying to make a leap, right, or go over, you just eyes wide open. And if you get in a situation that you're pretty much, it's not what you thought, or you're not getting the support that you expected and things like that, then what is your exit point? What is, how long you're going to stay, and make that internal contract with yourselves first. Make that decision within yourself. How long do you need? How long will you stay? What is the payoff? Because it can get pretty intense and it can be hard. You're not stupid. You're not an idiot. It's the learning curve. It's a matter of muddling through and learning. And the good consulting firms will make sure you have the support. But sometimes they sell like crazy and everyone's stretched thin because the salespeople sold 10 jobs and yet they only have enough to staff 5. Mm-hmm. And then that's when they start breaking the teams apart. And then you're sort of stuck. So just know you may take the leap, you may decide to do it, but then where's your point where you're like, okay, I'm done. And then when you're looking at for healthcare users with Health Cloud, I saw the blip about needing hands-on with Health Cloud. And I think, Lori, that's one of the things I was talking about. We can talk about projects and, doing people choose a project and, we just get together and like a group, someone's having problems with Health Cloud and advising like, okay, have you looked at this or whatever with the orgs. You can get experience with Health Cloud, but Health Cloud itself is not it's in healthcare land. Every Salesforce AE is sort of kind of mandated. They have to sell Health Cloud for any healthcare client. Sort of like they don't have a choice. Well, they have choices, but it's a mandate, right? Unofficial mandate. Anyone watching this, I deny saying it. But they have to. But the reality is, a lot of times when you're implementing Salesforce, you're not even touching Health Cloud. They have Health Cloud, but it takes a long time before you even touch components of Health Cloud. When you're brand new installing, you usually do a lot of Service Cloud configurations first. So for those of you who are like, oh, I need to be a master of Health Cloud, no, you don't. What you need to do, you don't. You need to understand it. You need to understand when to use it, why you would use that. But to actually be able to do the configurations in your sleep, no. Again, there's 3 releases a year. They're going to constantly change. You're going to end up using what you need. Do not fixate on the components within Health Cloud and doing it, but understand why it's used. When is the use case to pull that forward, and what kind of level of effort are we looking at? That is really valuable if you go the consulting route.
So I've seen some diagrams of the architecture of it in the Health Cloud, and it seems so complicated. So does that imply that there are pockets of people working on one component, and then there's an overall, maybe an architect like you, looking at how those components are going to be put together and how they're going to be connected to one another? Is that how it is?
It does. So the architect is looking at that the design overall is cohesive and working together and not against each other, and also towards best practices. And so you could have people working on different components of it, absolutely. But then, and you may have architects on those different components, but then you have an overarching, a domain architect that's making sure, okay, it's all coming together in the way it should. When it comes to Health Cloud, that's my anchor, right? The Health Cloud and overall and how we look at it. And so people go, what about Health Cloud? Blah, blah, blah. They're like, well, best practice is this. This is how you do it, things like that. I got that by attending a lot of Health Cloud expert calls, staying very close to Salesforce, listening in, looking at their documentation, right? And just staying very close to them. But to that point, if you talk about integration right now, I am not an integration expert at all. So then I talk to a technical architect on the integrations. And then if someone's a flow expert, I talk about flow. Candidly, I bet money, instead of focusing so much on Health Cloud, if you became a flow expert, people would eat you up. And then you could go over to Upwork. Who's that firm?
Upwork,
yeah,
freelancing type of job. Is that what it is? Yeah.
Yeah. So become a flow ninja, and then go do freelance work. Health Cloud is a very niche market. So it makes sense to build on what you all know, healthcare, right? But if you want a technical skill that is hot, it flows within Salesforce, especially with the mandate by the end of the year. We need to start moving off of workflow and process builder.
Yeah.
You can go promote your skills, go get jobs, freelance jobs, and get paid, right, to do flows. And then that's your experience, and that's what you're building on.
That's a great tip. Okay. Does anyone have any more questions? We can use the remaining time for additional questions. Anyone? I think we're ready to wrap this up. Any last few words for us before we end this session, Tina?
No, I really appreciate the time to tell my stories, and thank you for listening to me tell those stories. I'm pretty passionate about it. I think you all have a really good, but please, please, please listen to what Salesforce is saying, what they're promoting, because if you anchor to that, there will be consulting firms who are going to want to hire you for that. So think of that. What is your unique selling? And you're selling yourselves, and you'll do great. And don't let anyone else tell you what you can and can't do. I've had people look at me like, you don't know what the heck you're talking about. And, I'm like, anyways, we all have our advocates and our naysayers. Just keep moving forward.
There you go. That's the spirit. All right. Well, thank you so much for spending this hour with us. We really, really got a lot. And you had been such a very good storyteller is what I would say. Lots of good tips. Thank you.
Thank you. You have a good one.
Okay, yeah. Thanks everyone for
Thanks.
joining. Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks. Goodbye, all.
Let me just save this chat as well before I log out.